Texas Math Mundo audience. Today we have a real treat in store for us. We have the 1985, 86, 87 state champion class 4A in calculator applications, Mr. Ariel Mendiola from La Joya High School, a proud Coyote. He's right ahead. Let me take a moment and ask you that if you enjoy this content, that you please hit the subscription button and the notification bell, smash that like button, and leave a comment below. The 1985, 86, and 87 Class 4A Calculator State Champion right ahead. My name is Saul Cantu, and this is Texas Math Mundo. Texas Math Mundo audience. We have the three-time state champion in calculator applications. The year 1985, 1986, 1987, Class 4A from La Joya High School, a proud Coyote, Mr. Ariel Mendiola. Welcome, Mr. Mendiola.
Hey, just glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you. I think you're going to provide us with a fascinating perspective, and I really look forward to this. So let's start off with asking, how you doing?
You know, I'm doing great. I've been going through a number of career opportunities over the last 30 years, done a lot since I left high school, and just recently moved into doing some investments, and we're helping smaller companies grow. So I'm doing that today, and really enjoying my time focusing on that.
Oh, you're keeping busy then, keeping busy.
Yep.
Where's home?
So I grew up in South Texas near La Joya. La Joya is right outside of McAllen, Texas. So think of the tip of Texas, just a few miles. In fact, my home where I grew up was in Palmview, Texas. It's got about 5,000 people living there. It's a small place. I loved growing up there. My house was literally a mile from the Rio Grande River.
Wow.
So, used to take our bikes when we were kids and, bike all the way to the river and be able to see another country right from that. So it was very interesting growing up so close to the Mexican border.
Wow. And where's home now?
So now I live in Cypress, Texas, right outside of Northwest Houston. We've been living here since I graduated from college. And love this part of town. And, been in the Houston area ever since I graduated from the University of Texas.
You're in Cypress. I'm near Houston too, man. We got to go get a taco, man. We got to go get a taco.
I'm definitely up for it.
Hey,
definitely
I didn't know you were in Cypress. Wow. Okay,
absolutely.
That's great. So you've been working hard. So when you're not working, how do you find time to have fun? What are your hobbies and interests?
I do a lot of biking. I've got mountain bikes that I love to take out. I've been doing a lot of that lately, especially nowadays, trying to get a distance from others. You get outside and do some mountain biking. I do some road biking. Did the MS 150, which is the trek from Houston to Austin. Did that a couple of times this past couple of years until the pandemic, and looking to do it again this coming year. So excited about that. So just some biking. I also like to hike. Done some hiking. I did some in New Mexico. It's a beautiful country. Just getting outside and, going through and seeing the countryside and doing that. It's really nice. So I love doing that. And, weirdly enough, I write fictional short stories. So I like to sit and work on a story, come up with something crazy and just, write 30 pages of it. And it's not for anything else but my own entertainment. But when I spend so much of my time on technology, it's nice to get away and just kind of work my other side of the brain and try to think about stories and tension and figuring out plots and things like that. It's a lot of fun.
You never know. One day I may be browsing the bookshelves of Barnes and Noble and see, author Mendiola there. So you never know.
You never know, but I tell you, I love just reading my own stuff. I don't even like to share it much, but it's only because it's an opportunity to just an escape for me.
Sure.
Yeah, it's an escape. So it's fun to do.
So wow, that's really interesting. Biking and writing short stories. That sure seems like it would keep you busy, and it sounds like a lot of fun. To tell you the truth. So
yeah, it is.
So three-time state champion in calculator applications, and I don't know if I mentioned, you were the second place individual in number sense, class 4A, the year 1987. That's quite spectacular. So I want to get a little bit into your background. You know, what were the forces that shaped you? So were you born and raised in Palmview and La Jolla area?
I was. I definitely was. So I was born in McAllen, at the hospital, but grew up in Palmview, Texas, and went to school. I actually went to a small Catholic school till about sixth grade, then moved to the La Jolla School District. When that school, we reached the limit there in sixth grade, right? Yeah. So did La Jolla through high school. It was a great experience, great school system. They have tremendous support for UIL all the way through. So it was an opportunity for me. As soon as I got into that school, it was all about, hey, why don't you look at the UIL stuff? But to be frank, I was not a mathematics person. You know, I spent most of my time in middle school doing writing, creative writing, poetry reading, things like that. And math was just one of my subjects. Maybe not even the one that I was that excited about.
Oh, wow. So we're definitely going to explore this UIL stuff for sure. But I do want to ask, before we dive into it, how would you describe your cultural heritage? What is your cultural heritage?
Both my parents are from Mexico. Okay. I first generation born here in the U.S., here in Texas. Grew up speaking Spanish. Grandma only spoke Spanish, and she took care of me. So I was very fluent, and I still am. But very quickly worked on my English, and of course now I'm very fluent. I sometimes my kids. I have kids that are. Their Spanish isn't as good as mine was when I was growing up. Wow. Part of that is living in Houston, but I do work with them a lot too. We got to keep the language. So that's how I grew up, and that's my heritage, my background.
Oh, wow. That's great. So when did you realize that you had a talent for mathematics?
So as I said earlier, it was like that was not my strong subject. In fact, in some ways, I have shied away from math a little bit because I wasn't very good at it. I was in algebra in middle school in eighth grade, and I struggled a little bit with it. It wasn't my first subject. So when I became a freshman in high school, my uncle, which is being in a small town, small school, right? My uncle was my teacher, my math teacher. So Carlos Gomez he was my teacher, and it was weird. I didn't get assigned to him. It was luck that I got him, but he ran the UIL mathematics team. And I was in geometry with him in class, and I struggled to just focus on getting through geometry. But one of the kids that was in school with me, his name is Roberto Jackson, who's now a prominent attorney down there. He was a tremendous number sense. He did number sense. He actually got third place in state as a freshman, and he was in my class. And it was very inspiring to see a kid who basically had just gotten to high school, was already, at the state tournament, doing things that kids, 2 or 3 years older were trying to do. And so that made me think. And when between that and my uncle saying, you ought to try this. And I told him my math wasn't very strong. And he said, you know what? That's why you ought to do it. Do it to just grow. And I took that challenge on. So ninth grade, I'm going to say maybe March, April of my ninth grade. So the end of my ninth grade, I picked up the math number sense. I learned it. Then I looked at calculator applications, and that was the one that truly got me excited.
Really?
And I'll tell you, I'll be really honest with you. The reason that I loved it was because it was the idea of applying math to solving a problem. It was like I was trying to learn math for the sake of math instead of trying to solve a problem and using math to do it. And once I started getting excited about that, it changed everything. And if you ever look at a calculator applications test, it'll have word problems in there, and it'll say something as simple as how long will the tire on my cars last if I do this many miles and I do it this way and I drive that way, and you're just going to go, that's a real world problem. How do I solve it? And what I did was I used that application, that concept, to sort of figure out the answer to the problem. And by doing so, it got me hooked. So this was March of my ninth grade year. At the end of my ninth grade year, I spent the entire summer working on calculator applications.
Really?
Now imagine, I didn't even like math, but I started realizing that I wanted to understand this. And my uncle basically handed me a stack about, I'm going to say, this thick of previous tests and said, go for it. And so I sat there and I took test after test and I broke it down and I figured it out. But it was always about the search for the answer, not trying to figure out how to do the math. And in so doing, I got better at it and better at it and better at it. And then by the time I, caught up with my uncle towards the beginning of my sophomore year, I gave him the stack back. It was all completed. Everything was done. I solved every problem, right? Even if it took me longer than the test requires, but I figured it out. And he helped me with some things. And so first tournament, within the first 3 tournaments of my sophomore year, having never taken a UIL exam, I started to place first at these tournaments.
Really?
And that was, and of course I had teammates who worked really hard as well, and we helped each other and all of that. But it was one of those things where I didn't compete in calculator applications as a freshman, but I won state as a sophomore.
Wow.
And so forth. So it was a sheer want and need and challenge to figure out how to apply math in ways to solve real world problems.
I'm loving you're saying this because, I teach like English language learners sometimes. And the fact that the calculator context does have a real world context about it. You know what I'm saying? Like real problems, real world context. And I can see how that could inspire a young man to really dive deep to try to solve these problems.
Oh yeah, even the geometry that's in these tests, you can apply to buildings and other, so you can imagine, of course, you can also think about where I was headed in my mind about my career, right? I eventually studied engineering. So you can imagine that's all we do, right? We start with the problem and the math is just part of how do we get there, right? It's not necessarily the pure, study of the math. So it was exactly where I was headed. I didn't know that at the time, but it was what used and fueled me to learn that. It was funny because in those tests, there's also a lot of actual calculator where you have to use a calculator okay, that took me longer. I had to do a lot of practice. I still to this day. Oh yeah, I have when I write my 8, most people do a figure 8. I do 2 little circles. You don't know how many numbers I got, how many answers I got wrong because my 8s didn't touch. So those are the details I worked on, getting my numbers so they could read them and figuring out how to use my calculator. But as far as the true reason I did it, that was it. It was just a fun experience.
So your uncle, Mr. Gomez, and your classmate, Mr. Jackson, did they inspire you? Were they inspirations?
Yeah. In different ways. So my uncle was a tremendous math teacher. Just one of the best. That was well before I got there. He had the math team, so he knew how to motivate kids. He knew how to help them, build up the skills. Very good at life lessons on how to deal with failure, which we did a lot of. You don't always get there. And then he was also very good about practice, right? It's about repetition. It's about, working the details. And we did a lot of that. We spent a lot of time on that. And it made the difference between being good and being great was those details, right? Wow. And the practice that comes with it. And I think we did enough practice to where the meets were so much fun because you were already ready. You just went in there and you had some fun. Wow. But certainly that was something that he inspired me in that way. Now, Robert Jackson, Roberto as I call him, he was inspiring in a different way. Very competitive, always wanted to be faster and better than me. And of course, I did the same. So we competed against each other, and it was a fun, lifelong type of friendship, but also very competitive and tough. And he would beat me. He would beat me a lot, but it was all part of the process.
Awesome.
And together we ended up, benefiting from that. And of course, lifelong, even he's my friend today. He's one of my best friends, even 30 years later. And it was all because of that experience.
Awesome. And I always say, when competition drives us to excel, everybody wins.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And it's interesting about competition. And I will tell you one other thing I learned about it, which helped me in life. And I will probably, I can tell you a little bit about is, one of the things I did when I went to my first meet, I did not place. I had a complete control of that test. I knew everything on this test. And I got in there, but I was nervous, right? My hands were shaking. I couldn't get the numbers straight, but it was because of all that high energy. And what I found during that time was one of the things I saw when I walked into that classroom, I saw kids that all looked super smart. They all looked really smart. They were all with their calculators. They all had their tests. And some of them were you're talking about the top kids from all over those districts. Yeah. And to say that I was intimidated it was more than intimidated. I was sitting there going, oh my God, how could I ever be as good as these kids, And it led to that nervous outing, that first particular time. And I think what I learned was that everyone can be a little intimidated. You're all just like everyone else. You just gotta forget all of that and focus on yourself. And it was a big learning experience for me, one that I learned over time. Yep, go ahead.
Well, I want to say is that this is coming from a 3-time state champion. Even a 3-time state champion can feel the butterflies, the nervousness, say at a tournament. And there is no substitute for real life tournament action. You can practice in club after school, you can do all that thing, but when you see all those other guys, all those other teams, the electricity in the air, there's no substitute for live tournament action.
There is not. And let me tell you, it can either fuel you or it can scare you. And it scared me initially, but it's funny. And this is where I'll credit Carlos, my uncle again, is that he just reminded me, everyone's like you. Everyone's doing the same thing. Don't let it just focus on you. Just get through it. Let follow your repetition, follow your process. Don't think about it. And my buddy Robert had a way of intimidating other kids. At the time, it was all on paper, right? You'd flip it. And so when you flip those pages, if you're the first kid to flip a page when you're in a test, the other kids think, oh my God, this guy's way ahead of me, I'm behind. So he was very quick to flip he was very good at flipping it and doing it loud. So everybody knew that he was ahead, and he usually was. But it's that intimidation factor that can mess with your mind, and it's all part of that competition.
Wow, that's some great insight. So I do want to talk about the 1980s and La Joya High School. What was La Joya High School like in the mid 80s?
High school, first of all, is a 4A school, so it was larger school in that time frame, right? That was a larger school. We had 1,000 kids, in our class. We had a big school. It was very much like what you would expect. The Friday night lights, the football games, the pep rallies, all of that. The school, that particular school is got a very diverse group of students. Not demographically, because it's almost all Hispanic kids, yeah. But we have kids there that are, certainly, very, very much college bound, and also a lot of migrant kids, right? So there's a lot of differences, and so the school had to serve all of that and do it in a way that made sense for everybody, and they did a great job. But it was a challenging environment the whole time. But I'll tell you, the football games brought everybody together. It was that small city, high school environment where there's all this school spirit and everybody's all excited, and those Fridays everybody's all dressed up, and it's the big football games. It's just a great school to be a part of.
You paint a wonderful picture. That must have been so beautiful back in those days. Must have been so beautiful.
It was, yeah, it really was.
So, I was gonna say, so you mentioned your uncle, Coach Gomez. You mentioned Jackson. Do you remember any other teachers or teammates that you'd like to make a shout out to now that you have an opportunity?
So another one of my fellow competitors was Ramon Perez. Ramon Perez was a year older than me, and he did a great job. He was always, pressing us as well. He was very involved in a lot of other activities, but he was one of those. And then Joe Gonzalez, who was 2 years older than me, he was probably the one of the stronger calculator guys, and he and I competed together quite a bit. He actually went to regionals a number of times. We all had, I mean, my whole team had a lot of every year we had regionals, we had state opportunity. It was like that kind of, we had a lot of kids with us. But Joe Gonzalez also is one of my best friends. He and I ended up going to University of Texas together. He was ahead of me, but we ended up, going to school there, and still to this day we connect. We always we're fellow Longhorns, so we communicate and talk all the time. Go to games together, things like that. So, it's interesting about UIL, and it's not just about the school you go to. It's also about the other kids. You meet these top kids from all these other districts, and these kids end up at all these schools like UT and A&M and everywhere. And then there's another opportunity to connect. And of course, you have similar goals and things that you like to do. So it helps you get the lifelong friendships that you end up keeping for many years later.
Oh, that's awesome. So you weren't a lone gun. I mean, you had a cohesive team, and you all went to many local area tournaments?
We did. We went to many tournaments. We actually had matching shirts, if you can imagine that.
I love it. Yes. I love it when a team shows up with shirts that match. It says team. Hey, the football team wears the same jersey.
Absolutely. No, I agree. And it makes you feel like, and then they feel the presence. You feel the presence. You see your teammates around at the tournament. And La Joya had a pretty, active UIL program, right? So we'd go to these tournaments, and there was hundreds of kids from our school there, and we, all try to win those district. The tournament team school thing and everything. They won a lot of those school events where the school would be represented in a lot of UIL events and win. But for the math team, we had competition among a couple of other cities, but in general, we were placing high a lot. So what we would do is we go to Corpus Christi, or we'd go to San Antonio, which you can imagine San Antonio was the big city for us, right? Yeah. And we'd go there and we'd compete against those guys and girls, because those were the best, right? And we needed to challenge ourselves at those levels. So we spent probably in a year, we'd do a couple of San Antonio tournaments, some in Corpus Christi. Never came to Houston, never did that. But we did do that, aside from just being in the Valley, although the Valley is a pretty big area too as well. So lots of tournaments. We did many.
So I'm imagining, I was going to ask about your study habits, because I imagine you were really disciplined and driven if you finished that whole stack of tests that your uncle gave you. So you must have had really disciplined study habits.
I will say that this particular thing got me excited. So I was very motivated with it. And it got me wanting it. And I could see, one of the things about it I loved is you could score yourself, and then you could score yourself. So you could keep seeing the improvement, which was very motivating for me to continue to press, right? But aside from that, it was always about hey, I want to do better, and I want to be better, and I want to be better. And that was the motivation. But from what I got from that, and what I learned from that, was that, the idea of saying, hey, in 3 or 4 months, I got myself to a position where I was ready to really compete at that level. Going into my sophomore year, I felt like, what seemed almost unsurmountable when I started seemed so good when I finished that I thought that helped me, because it gave me experience to say, if they hand you something really complicated, don't let yourself get intimidated. Just take it piece by piece. Just keep going, and eventually it'll make sense. And I think that that was something that I took forward from there, well into the rest of high school and into college especially, because it is not, sometimes you can get put in front of things that are very difficult to understand. And if you don't have the confidence to say, hey, I can get through it, that's the key. You don't have to know it all. You just have to be willing to put the effort and be confident you can get there.
I'm so happy you said that because one of my questions on my list was, do you feel that UIL helped you or aided you in your college and career path?
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. In fact, I would say it was probably one of my most fundamental uh, things that built some of what I used my tool set to get through college and even past college. And I'm not kidding. I mean, honestly, like I said, I think when you go to college and look, I went to a school where we didn't have. I mean, I'm here in Cyprus now. Kids today have access to all these advanced courses and AP classes and all this wonderful, like you can do all this great. We didn't have that. We had just, we had pre-cal and I was lucky to get it. And we didn't have a lot of kids that could get into that class, but we got it. And beyond that, it was not a lot to learn from. So when I got to the University of Texas in the engineering school, you get there and the first day you're there, they tell you, listen, we have, it's a tough program. And you start meeting the kids there, and the kids are the best from India, from China, all over the world. They're coming and they're making and you're thinking, how does a kid from, Palmview, Texas get to participate in this and be able to make it? And I think a lot of what drove me was saying, look, I've been through this. I know that just because these other kids look smart and everything, that doesn't mean that I can't keep up with that.
Oh, I love what you said. That's excellent insight. I love that.
Yeah,
Wow.
in fact, it was one of those things where you just, and again, look, the material's tougher for you because maybe you didn't see all the material that these other kids did, but you can get through it. You just have to put the time and effort and work through it, and you can, and it does work. But you have to know that, that's probably one of the things that I got from it was having done it, I knew I could do it. If somebody says to you, go do something, if you work hard, you'll get there, you can take it as great advice, but until you've actually felt it and done it and you've tasted it, it's hard to believe. And I think that that's true for everybody. It does, and everybody can apply it in different ways, but it's certainly very important. You got to practice winning before you can win, right?
Oh, I love it. Yes. It must have instilled a sense of confidence in you. You weren't deterred or intimidated by your environment once you got to UT. That must have been great. That's awesome. Now, I'm very curious. This next question got me so curious. Do you remember what calculator you used? You're the calculator state champion.
HP11C.
HP11C.
Let me tell you about so here's the HP11C was handed to me. It was obviously I had to learn it. And I have a similar one, but it's not the 11C, it's the 12C. Unfortunately, because they don't make the 11C anymore. And I ran it through college. I got to keep it after high school and got it about a year into college, and it failed on me and I couldn't buy another one. So 25 years later, which is a couple of years ago, I wanted a calculator and I thought I want my 11C back. And sure enough, I went onto eBay and I found one, and I still have it. It's older, but yes, I mean, look, I will say that HP doesn't make calculators like they used to, but you can still find the 12C, which is pretty good, and a couple others. But man, I do miss my my calculator.
Wow. I imagine you use that baby big time. So.
Oh yeah, I could by the time, I could effectively not even have to look at my fingers when I was doing it. It was but speed was not my I wasn't the fastest kid, but I was definitely pretty good. And I was in band in middle school, and I played the trumpet, so my fingers were pretty dexterous. But yeah, no, it was I'll tell you, I still use a calculator. I don't trust these spreadsheets half the time. I'm like, no, let me check this myself. Sometimes those spreadsheets have formulas I don't understand, but I can definitely find it on my calculator, figure it out on my calculator.
That's funny. So what was the most memorable moments you have from that year? What would you consider the most memorable? Was this a state meet? Do you remember the state meet? What's most memorable about those years?
The state meets were great. They were great. But I remember them, but I don't know that was the most memorable. To me, the most memorable were the events where I had the whole team. We'd all go there. We had one tournament where we placed first, second, and third in calculator, and and another tournament where we did the same in number sense. Things like that, where the team all got together and we just blew it out, and we had a good time. And it was so much fun just being together as a team. So those tournaments where all of us got to go, that was fun. Right. And I'll tell you, there was one we had this one time that Roberto, myself, and Ramon, who were all like senior people at this point, we're like maybe I think Ramon was a senior and we were juniors, and we got this one kid named Manuel who was good at math but had no idea how to do any of this, and we said we're going to figure out a way to get this kid to place, and we want to do it like this year. And we kind of motivated him and worked with him, and he would get nervous and whatever else. But by the time we got through that, he placed third in one tournament, and he just never won anything in his life. And it was just the most awesome thing to see. And we proved that, hey, if you follow process and you just keep at it, you're going to get good enough to get there. And it's just, you just have to have the faith that you can do it.
That's a great story, how his peers motivated him. And what a great environment you must have provided for him. And he must have felt spectacular when he got third place.
He did. And he stayed through the team after we graduated. So it was good for him. And, but yeah, it was one of those things that I think those were the moments that I thought were fun and kind of like the team environment was a really good part of it.
You consider this the vast state of Texas, and you're a 3-time state champion. Man, that boggles my mind. How does that feel to be a state champion?
Well, I was always chasing the number, the score, right? Now, so I don't think of it like that. But it is interesting to think about after you look at afterwards, right? But I never really thought about it like that. I thought about me against the test, me against the clock, and the best that I could do. And ultimately the results were the results. But yeah, it was, it is kind of interesting to think about when you look back and you think, wow, that's a lot of kids over a lot of states. Over a lot of counties and a lot of districts. Yeah, and then for that many years in a row, I don't know. It was a little bit. I never really thought about it like you put it, but I think for me it was all about beating the test, beating the time, doing the best I can. That was the most important.
Wow. So, where do you keep those gold medals?
So my mom has them, along with more trophies than I would like to admit. I don't know. It's very interesting about this because after I left school, after I got out of high school, my mother had them in this little display case, and there was so many of them, and then the medals and everything. It was just, and as with most things, you move on to your life. You don't think about them, and you kind of move on. But I was home just about 6 months ago, and it's all still there, and my mom is still very, very proud of that whole group of things, and I am too. But I think about, like I said, I think those are just the results of the work, but the real work, the real benefit was just what I learned from it and the things that I got to share with my teammates when I did it.
Okay, so you're a proud Longhorn.
I am. Yes.
What was your degree in? Can I ask?
So I got an electrical engineering degree with a minor in computer design, and then I got my MBA from the University of Houston, which I did when I was at Exxon. So I went to University of Texas. I graduated in 1991, and then I moved to Houston to work for Exxon, and then I ended up in the MBA program here at the University of Houston, which is a great experience as well. And then after a period of time with Exxon, I eventually started my own company and did some things around computer design and payments and things like that. So had a fun career.
I like you even more. I'm a Cougar also.
Look at that.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh man. I'll tell you, they're love the Cougs. Love U of H. I think that another great school. It's interesting about the state of Texas. There's so much here and so many resources, so many people, so many great educators. Just a great resource. And when I started my first company. Did it here in Houston, and I didn't have to look far to find great technical talent, technology talent, because so much goes on within the oil and gas industry, and a lot of talent comes out of U of H. We had a lot of great students from there, great graduates. So, look, I think the UL program has done a wonderful job, pushing academics, doing all the things that they do. And I think the schools have, especially those schools that don't have the same opportunities as some of the bigger, huge school districts, right? These programs really assist and help bring some of these types of things to those kids. And so I think it's great. And so from that time to now, I see it's continued, and that's great. That's wonderful.
So have you ever returned to La Joya High School, or is that a part of your distant past?
So I still go back to the La Joya area because my family lives there. Where I grew up is there. My friends are there. I still talk to many of my old classmates. So from that perspective, as far as the high school itself or the school district, I haven't had any real interaction, but not because I don't want to. It's just been, it's just not a connection that I have. Although some of my old classmates now work there. So I don't know. It's been interesting. I've always thought about going to one of those tournaments one day just to go see how the kids are doing,
Hey, and you have street credit. You're a 3-time state champion, man. You have credit. Hey, put on those gold medals and go visit the school. You know what I'm saying?
I love that idea.
You have credit, man. State champion, buddy. You have credit. I'm going to ask you, what do you value the most about that UIL journey?
I think the experience, as I mentioned, and I continue to say, it's like I think the whole experience gave me confidence in my abilities, a sort of an opportunity to take something, invest time and effort, and then get a result and go, wow, I really pulled that off, and that helps sort of develop your ability to sort of have confidence in what you can do in the future. And that's why these tournaments are great, because it gives that opportunity for kids to go win, right? You don't win in school. You don't win. You try to get an A, and that's awesome. But going to win something, it brings out that competitive spirit, and that competitive spirit is how people, bring out their best.
Exactly.
And I think that's a very important part of UIL, at least for academics, right?
So, I consider the next part the most critical part of the interview. Here's this. What advice do you have for young students that may come across this interview? Here they have a 3-time state champion in calculator. What do you want to tell these kids?
Well, the first thing I would say is, if you want to go do this, if you want to go do something like this, just do it. Don't just, and I would say, take those tests, take those old exams, look at what others have done, and work through them. And don't worry about the time. Don't worry about, I just dig into it, work it through it, figure it out, and then go do it, go practice it. Yeah. But one of the things I always did when I took a test was, the only things that mattered to me at the end of the test was what I got wrong, right? And then I went and I took those apart and I figured out why I got it wrong. And I didn't take another test till I understood everything I got wrong in the previous. And then I would do it again and again and again. And failure is often, and you're going to continue to make mistakes you made before. But it's repetition, it's practice, it's figuring out all these pieces. Those fundamentals will stick with you. One of the things that I learned is that when you're under a lot of pressure, like I was saying early on, you fall back to your habits. It always happens, right? So the more pressure you're under, and the more often you're under this pressure during these testing cycles, the more likely you are to improve that performance under pressure, so that it becomes second nature. And then you don't have to worry about the stress. And those things help. In fact, the difference between being good and great is that extra 10% at the top, right? It's that extra work that it's not good enough to just finish the test and score it. You gotta review the material, understand what you missed, go back and do it again. And you'll see that the difference makes that extra effort makes all the difference. Oh. And so that, I think, is what gave me an edge, I think, in a lot of ways.
Great advice. Great advice. You know what I'm saying? I love it. That's how you distinguish yourself. That's how you distinguish yourself. Awesome. So, what does the future hold for you? 3-time state champion, Mr. Ariel Mendiola.
So as I mentioned, I just finished up. So I'm now an investor. I'm on a board of a few companies. I'm one of the companies I'm on the board of. It does cryptocurrency, which is another new area of that payment. And so for me, I've been in digital payments 20 years, 25 years. And the future for me is to continue to sort of push through and understand payments and help figure out the best way to move money between 2 points, which I've done my whole career. But more importantly, working with small companies and helping them solve the basic problems of building your own company and sort of getting to the point where you can create something and bring it to market and make it successful. So I spent a lot of time in small companies, so I know how to do that, and that's what I do. So I look, at the end of the day, we're all, you're a teacher. I love teaching. I think teaching is one of the most amazing, thing you can do in your life is teach others. And in some ways, that's what I do today. I try to do that. But I think my whole career started with seeing what teachers can do and how they've been able to change people's lives. And you get to the end of your career and you want to be a part of that as well. You want to teach others how to grow, how to be better. And certainly for me, with small companies, that's an area where I've got enough information I can help share and help them, help those companies be successful.
Awesome. So, any parting words or final thoughts as we conclude this interview?
Look, for anyone out there who's looking to be a part of the UIL experience, don't hesitate. Just do it. Be a part of it. And just don't be a part of it. Participate, challenge yourself, get all of the experience that's there, because those high school years go fast. And what you take from it is only what you put in. So do it. Go out there and do it. And I think that experience that experience and the people that are a part of that will be a part of you for the rest of your life. And embrace it. Take advantage of it.
Awesome final thoughts. Mr. Ariel Mendiola, 3-time state champion. I just want to say, I think you've provided a great perspective. I've really enjoyed your energy. I've enjoyed your perspective, your insight. That's awesome. Now, I'm in Pasadena. You're in Cyprus. I didn't know you were in Cyprus. We're not that far, buddy, man. We need to get together and have a taco.
We should. I never turn down a taco, ever.
I appreciate that. So let's make it a point. We'll make it a point sometime, when we're not so busy. Let's go out there and have a taco, man.
I'm free tomorrow. Let's go tomorrow.
I got to work. See, it must be nice. Must be nice. So I really do hope our paths cross, and I can't thank you enough for your energy, for your perspective, for your willingness to share your stories with my audience. And I just want to say thank you very much.
Well, and thank you for having me. I think what you're doing to bring some of these messages out to the kids is amazing. And I know that they'll benefit from it, whether it's me and others. And so thank you for doing what you do. Much appreciated. And thank you for having me.
I appreciate you. Farewell.
Thank you very much.
Farewell. Wow, I really enjoyed that session. He had such great energy and such great bits of wisdom to share with the audience. Mr. Ariel Mendiola, the 3-time state champion in calculator applications, Class 4A, 1985, 86, and 87 from La Joya High School. What a pleasure. All right, let me take a moment and ask you that if you enjoy this content, that you please hit the subscription button and the notification bell, that you smash that like button, and that you leave a comment below. I have many great plans for this channel, and your support really helps. Thank you very much. I appreciate your support. My name is Saul Cantu, and this is Texas Math Mundo. Farewell.